All right, this is, so I have some folks in here, and they're from Wichita, Encore, and they don't know that I'm going to do a true confession to you guys, so don't point them out. But I want you to know that we have a great culture in Wichita, and the fact at our Encore, and the fact that we're really transparent. When we find our problems, we just kind of, we use different opportunities to grow and educate each other and make ourselves better. And we are going to talk about some of our boo-boos today. So there is a policy with SWOG about follow-ups and how they should be done, and about the consent withdrawal process. It can be very confusing, especially to new folks. You've got so much going on. It's really hard sometimes, and we just want to go over how we did it in Wichita. Doesn't mean it's perfect. We're not perfect. We have lots of weaknesses, and we like that. So here we go. So everybody has a plan until they get hit. You know, we all think we've got this, no problem. Yeah. So we got hit. So our situation, we were Wichita CCOP. Then we went through the process. I'm not sure if anybody was in here during that time. Anybody belong to a CCOP who changed to an NCOR in the room? That's all? Why, it was a hard process. We changed a lot of things. So in Wichita, we had some big changes. We had staff turnover. We had a lot of new staff. We had lots of new ideas. We had different generations, and we got hit. Not because of the generations, just we assumed everybody knew what we knew. And that happens a lot. So we have a safety huddle every morning. We're on the phone at 8:30, and that means all of our sites call in, and we're telling each other, you know, what's going on today? Do we have new consents, new patients? We have a friend up here. So we have all things going on like that, and that's what we talk about, chemo, checks, etc. And there was a conversation about somebody being frustrated because they were unable to find patients and follow-up, and there were too many expectation reports. You guys know probably what those are like. And we have so many emails from our quality assurance specialist. Her name is Stephanie. And on these new folks, it got pretty upsetting for them. They were at their wits' end. And I heard somebody on the phone say, I found the solution. I fixed it. I know how to fix this. There's a consent withdrawal document on the drive. And these folks who aren't coming in, who aren't doing what they're supposed to, we can ask them to leave. We can just say, you don't want to be with us, so we can help you with that. And then there was talk of sharing it. And I was like, oh, and it was so convenient. Now I'll tell you, this is a 4-year process. So not all of this happened in one safety huddle, but that's exactly what I said, was what? Hello? Did I hear that? I mean, what? So I knew we had a problem. So we started looking into our problems. Yeah, we had 6 patients who had signed consent withdrawal forms. I wasn't aware. Marge Good used to be our manager in Wichita, and I will tell you, we had to go through a lot of hoops to get that going, and I understood why now. I really did. And when we checked into these 6 patients, the documentation was pretty sparse. The physician talked about how there were toxicities or problems or questions, and the staff wrote appropriate notes of this patient has wished to withdraw, but there wasn't a conversation with the patient. I don't know if the patient knew what they were asking for. So we kind of started going through, and I'm going to tell you about 2 of these patients and the differences, and maybe have some learning moments, hopefully, and you guys feel free to share and tell us what you think about different topics. So there were 2 of these 6 that were truly appropriate consent withdrawals. Step 1 in our education and our safety huddles, we started talking about education and what that meant. What did a consent withdrawal actually mean? And how could we talk to those patients? Because if our nurses and our CRAs and our physicians didn't understand the effect on the clinical trial, how could we have a patient understand that? So we had to kind of do some real deep diving. The very next thing I did was withdrew that consent withdrawal is not on that drive. Nobody can get to that. I will tell you, that went away real quick. And then we made some changes to that consent withdrawal form so we would know if anyone used it after that point. So I like this. Life is about balance, the good, the bad, the highs and lows, and the pina and the colada. And we had a few. We did. I love Ellen DeGeneres. She made this. It's just really wonderful. So we really proposed some long-term follow-ups. We assured, that our patients were getting medical surveillance. These were things that were important. This is part of the follow-up information. These are the things why you want to do the long-term follow-ups and keep those patients on trial, even after they have finished their treatments. All of this information, and Mike did a great job of talking about the survival, long-term side effects, new malignancies, accurate survival data. That's the one we keep coming back to, making sure that we know if this study is making a difference in the future or not. So consent withdrawal education, we started talking in Wichita about what all these mean. So we have a form, and I'm going to show you a piece of that form in each one of these slides. And this is one of the first ones. Just asking the patient, if the patient tells you he wants to withdraw, okay, what does he want to withdraw from? What's the issue? What's the problem? And if he wants to stop treatment, stopping treatment means stopping the medication, stopping certain aspects. It doesn't mean stopping the follow-up. Maybe it doesn't mean stopping the test. Maybe it doesn't mean stopping the lab kits or the specimen kits. You really have to get down with the patient into more of the weeds and go through what exactly does he or she not want to do anymore. A lot of times it may be something simple. I just don't like getting poked. I don't want to do this blood draw anymore. They take 10 vials of my blood. I don't want to do it anymore. Okay. That's what we're withdrawing from. But you still want us to follow you. Yes. You don't mind if I call you. No, I don't mind. Do you mind if I see you at the visits? No. So he's not withdrawing from the study. He's withdrawing from one area in the study. So we always ask about those side effects. Maybe their life plan has changed. So we have folks that are saying, I'm going to retire. I'm going to head off in an RV. I'm not going to want to come here and get my CT every 6 months. I'm going to be in California and not in Kansas. I'm going to look at some water. And we could figure out how we do it from there. And then maybe it's financial. Maybe they can't afford the test. Maybe coming into the clinic is too difficult. Maybe there's some transportation issues. We try to really dig deep on what all these look like. And they do a great job now. And then another one is the consent withdrawal and the education that we try to talk about over and over about, I would like to stop the treatment, but I don't want the test. I don't want the test. And that means those calendars that you look at for every protocol, maybe there's 3 or 4 things on there they don't want to do anymore. Find out what those are. But the patient will continue on other parts of that and get to know you better. And then I no longer want to participate in this study. I don't want my further medical information to be used. I don't want you to obtain information that has already been obtained. You can keep, but no more. That means he doesn't want to, after this point, he doesn't want any additional information sent. Well, that's kind of a different situation. But we need to know for sure if we can use what we already have, and that's always an important part. And this patient does not want to be in clinical trial, doesn't want any additional information, of course, then we start talking about what that looks like. I still would ask the questions, so do you mind if I call you? Do you mind? Yes, I mind if you call me. I don't want to hear from you. Okay, we got that. We'll write that down. And make sure you're documenting all of that. Document that. conversation that you went through point by point, what that patient wanted, what he didn't want, why they didn't want it. And then that way when you're audited, you have that information and you can tell that story really well. So we're going to do some case studies. I don't know if I can, this one's pretty hard. This one was a hard one in our office for our folks. So we have a female. She was placed on a trial with SWOG, stage 2 breast cancer, great lady. She was married, she had no children. We registered her, she was doing great. And then, life does happen, things change. Unfortunately, she started coming in and the nurse noticed that every time she came in, she was a little bit more angry. She was a little more defiant with the physician. We have some pretty headstrong doctors. I don't know if you guys have any of those, but you have a headstrong nurse in a room, we have a headstrong doctor and a headstrong patient. I mean, that is like a combination for a big boom. And one day that happened. She was in the room with one of our physicians. You could hear the screaming down the hall. There was a fight. The physician said, get out of here, don't you come back. She said, you can't fire me, I'm firing you. He said, no, I already fired you. I mean, you can imagine. This is clinic drama. I'm sure it happens other places. So when we dug a little deeper, we found out she was having a lot of marital problems. That was because she was having a lot of behavioral health issues. That's a big issue in our community. And she didn't really have any help for that. She would not ask for assistance, or she wouldn't allow others to place her in places we could get her assistance. She actually was homeless at this point. We did not know that. So you have a situation that went from a decent situation to a point of we don't know where we're going to find her. Oh, she's staying under the bridge by the park. There was a conversation then about, I wonder how long she's really been taking her medicine. She's been telling us she's taking her medicine. Has she been taking her medication? Then how do we find her? And the nurse looked at me and she said, well, I'm just going to have her do a consent withdrawal. Why? How you can't find her, how are you going to have her sign a consent withdrawal? That's the first question. But the second one is, we don't know. She came from she had a great thing going. She was doing well. She was on her behavioral health meds, all of those things. Should we just suddenly take her off? Is that good for the study? Is that good for her? So we started really talking about that. Well, we asked everybody to cool down, especially the doctor. And we tried to find out about her supply of drug. And we did finally find out that she actually had been taking all of her study drug. She had another 2 weeks with her. And she wanted to continue. They reached out to some of our shelters. They found the patient. And we're able to have some concepts of, what do you want? Where are you at? Do you want to keep doing this treatment? She did. She went back on some of her medications. It was a hard kind of road there for a while, but she's back. She only went off the drug for a 3-week period. We documented everything. We've transferred her to a different physician in the same clinic, but we do schedule her on a day when that other doctor is not in there. That always helps. And she didn't ask to be withdrawn from the study. She didn't ask to not receive treatment or be followed by a research staff member. So those are just some of the things. Would anyone in here have wanted to withdraw the consent at the first? Good. You guys are great. You already passed. Why are we even in here? Why are we doing this? Okay. So the next one is a 68-year-old male. He has CML. Great guy. He's been married for 39 years, 6 children, 10 grandbabies. He's got it going on. He's all into his new retirement and life. He has talked about being afraid of needles. It comes up. If you've ever been in a bone marrow biopsy, you can see why somebody might be a little nervous about that big old needle, especially if they're not sedated. he decided that after he was registered through the trial, it came time for his he did his 6 months yearly, but at year 1, he said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be stuck on that. I don't want to go through that pain anymore. I want to travel. I don't want to have to come back here every 6 months for a bone marrow biopsy. And he pleaded, please don't make me do this. So the fear for him was real, so real. And this was the time that the staff started talking to him about, okay, let's talk to the physician. Let's see what the physician thinks. What could we do? Did we need it for disease process to see if the patient was in remission, or was it for the study? What did his physician think? What did the patient want to know about his study? The plan worked out. The plan got worked out with the physician and the patient, and they decided that, we just wouldn't do the bone marrow biopsy. We would do peripheral blood instead. We called the research base, let them know what the patient had talked about. They actually seemed relieved that we weren't saying we're taking the patient off study. The patient's going to continue. He's going to do well on this. And we just started having those conversations. It's all about the conversation. So that form that we took off the drive, this is extremely tiny. Can anybody read this? Because she's trying. She's got her glasses on. That's good. What the bottom of this form is the date every time someone asks to use the consent withdrawal form. So we actually put the date on it of the last consent withdrawal and the initials of the nurse. And the reason we do that is so we will know if this is a true consent withdrawal that has gone through all the processes. So it's a checker. I'm looking at the 2 people in Wichita. I don't even know if one of them knows that this is at the bottom. Oh, Tracy does. Yay, okay. So this is the notification process. It's pretty lengthy. Yeah, it's pretty lengthy. So we have to have, after the patient has signed what they want to do, if we're going to have the bone marrow, not have a bone marrow, if they're going to let us follow them, not let them follow us, we have to have the signature of that patient, the date, the signature of the physician who is caring for the patient. The research nurse who had the conversation has to sign this form. The NCOR manager, Tracy, has to sign this form, and she's following up to make sure all of our steps have been followed. And then I get to sign the form. I ask the same questions Tracy asked, and then our principal investigator, Dr. DeKeel, has to sign it. And when I bring him this form, I need to bring him the documentation, because unless it is in just an odd situation, he is going to ask us to go back and talk to that patient to make sure we can continue doing long-term follow-up on that patient. Some of the research bases are now sending in your quality reports the number of consent withdrawals you have had in a certain time frame. So I understand that's it's going to be more and more part of our scorecard. So is it overkill? It is. I know it is. I know that getting all of these signatures, it sounds like we're trying to put a bill through Congress or Senate and having the president sign it. But we're really hoping that what this form allows is for a conversation to have taken place, and that the patients are receiving an education about why their participation is so important. And we understand life changes, there's life things going on, but without those patients, we wouldn't have clinical trials. And if we don't have clinical trials, we're not going to have cures. And we want that to happen. So we really want to keep going with our really lengthy overkill process. So, and at the same time, by requiring all these signatures, we know that our nurses and our CRAs know the process. They know why it's important, and they know why we're doing it. So, if it's difficult to find patients, just a few quick tips. You can do hospital ERR, EHRs, I'm losing my voice, I can't talk. Voter registrations, and I will tell you, some of this is controversial. I happen to live in a very red state, and I'm not talking in color, I'm talking about political, and we have to show a birth certificate and proof of our address. We have to do all kinds of hoops to vote in our state. So we know that if Mrs. Smith shows up in voting, it's Mrs. Smith, unless somebody has taken all of her data and somehow jumped through those hoops. So we have that ability. Some states have it. You just need to make sure that you're confirming that it is an identified process. Hospital cancer registrars, I think that's somewhere that something we overlook sometimes. Those folks are required by law to follow up with the patients. They follow up. If they are diagnosed in that facility, the registrars in that facility have to follow them all the way through their entire journey. Whether that be to 110 years old, they're still on that list. Actually, I think we cap it at 100, but they do follow those patients. They already have a lot of your follow-ups. Just reach out to them, make friends with those folks. They're great. They're the ones responsible for our CDC rates for cancer and survival and all that great stuff. Family members, get ready to know those folks. This is what our voter page looks like. So if you put in my name and my birth date, if you have that, if you search here, you'll see when the last time I voted. You'll also see what, I almost told you what I was, what party I'm affiliated with, and it shows you, upcoming ones that I didn't go to. And there are several states around the across America who actually have this. So this is our team. We're a fun bunch. This is our kooky, crazy picture, and I'm so glad that they are here today.